Time for Thinking Real Estate. ThinkingRealEstate.com. Here on WKHM. Jackie Austin back hosting this week.
I am. How are you?
Good, Jackie. How are you?
Good.
Good real estate week?
It's...
You know, I've got a house for sale today.
Oh, really? What you got?
Well, it's not my house, but Matt Damon's house is for sale in Miami, Florida.
Really?
Yeah. A cool $21 million.
Yeah, I got that spare
want to write out a
change,
check?
Well, there you go. Interesting. The market is quite different when you involve that type of celebrity.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I listed a house this week, and actually 2 houses this week, so that's good. We're moving along. So, I brought a guest with me today, and his name is Jeff Fraunfelker. He's an associate with Schlechte Law Firms, so I asked him to come on and chat with us a little bit about some landlord-tenant stuff.
Cool.
Hi, Jeff.
Hi,
Good morning, Jeff.
How you doing? A long-time listener, first-time guest.
Good to have you here.
It's great to be here.
I kind of dragged him along, I think.
Can I still sign up for those golf lessons?
Oh, sure, yeah, you're in. You're in automatically if you're a guest, sure.
There you go.
I didn't make it in between the 6 and 7 this morning. But,
how do you like it working with Bill?
I like it. The guy is really brilliant when it comes to the whole law. He's just been teaching me a lot of things. It's been a real great learning experience so far, and it's been a lot of fun too.
And this is your first foray into real estate law, isn't it? Were you doing something else before?
Somewhat. Last firm I was at, Wilson & Brown, up in Lansing, we did mostly landlord-tenant law there.
Okay.
A lot of representing property management companies. But then I had my own law firm on the side as well, where I was doing mostly criminal law.
Got it. So you got quite a variety there.
Yeah, I've been trying to see it all, I guess.
Okay.
But
well, let's talk a little bit about some of the things that people should think about when they're in the rental industry, whether they're a landlord or a tenant. What kinds of things when it comes to leases should people be looking at? What should be included in leases, what shouldn't be, things like that.
I think it's first important to understand exactly what a lease is.
Oh, okay. That's good.
You got this piece of paper, you call it a lease, well that's just mostly the contract. And not all leases have to be in writing, and anything a year or less doesn't actually have to be in writing. That said, it's usually important to place everything in writing. The lease agreement itself is kind of memorializes what everybody's agreed to, obligations of both parties. But I think what's important to make sure you have is on the paper itself would be to identify the parties that are contractually obligated in the lease. Clearly identify the premises that you have, what the term of it would be, the rent or the consideration that each party is going to have. Where notices would be is really important to have, where you'd send your notices, utilities and other obligations and charges. I think it's important to explain also to any prospective tenant that what joint and several liability means. If you have more than one tenant moving in, the landlord's expectation, say for $600 a month, is $600 a month. They don't care how the two roommates worked it out or whatever's going on. Each one of them is jointly and severally liable for that $600 being received by the landlord.
A lot of that up in Lansing?
Yeah, a lot of that up in Lansing, East Lansing, the college towns.
Yeah.
A lot of interesting stuff happened up there.
Well, on that one, if somebody has what's the word I'm looking for? A cosigner, and the person's maybe not living in the unit, but they co-signed on the unit. How is responsibility on that one?
The cosigner is just as responsible as the actual tenant themselves. They're basically availing themselves for any sort of back rent or damages by operation of co-signing onto the lease. They don't have to be living there to be obligated. Okay. One thing, if a landlord is planning on charging a security deposit, that would be kind of an extra careful situation there. A lot of people get in trouble with their security deposits. You know, they should look at that particular act, the Landlord-Tenant Act. It's found in Act 348 of 1972. And what that does is has some pretty specific enumerated language that you need to place into your lease, specifically considering just the security deposit. A security deposit can't be more than 1.5 times the rental rate. And it's important to realize this isn't the landlord's money. This money has to be set aside. This is still the tenant's money. This is only for incidental damages primarily, as the Act says. It's for that, and then if there is backed rent on top of that, then it can be used for that. So it's kind of a no-no to just say, for the landlord to say, well, we're going to waive your last month's rent and just use your security deposit for it. That's not exactly the way the security deposit is actually supposed to be used.
But most renters you find are going to charge it or have a security deposit.
It's a good idea to. Sometimes in lower income areas you may not be able to find somebody that can pay the security deposit, because
Right.
a lot of times it's, I need your security deposit and first month's rent. There's nothing wrong with maybe increasing the monthly rental rate and then in lieu of a security deposit if you want to work something like that out. But at that point you are no longer charging a security deposit, so it's important to know that those aren't going to be for incidental damages and things along those lines.
Right.
But you do need to specifically place in the lease, as the Act would say, and I don't have the exact quoted language, and it's in quote marks in the Act, that you've got to give the tenant notice that they need to give the landlord notice 4 days, within 4 days of moving out, where to send that security deposit or any damage reports that are that are going to be charged against that. And yeah, that's super important to have that stuff.
Now, once a landlord gets notice that the person, or, where they're moving, do they have a certain amount of time before they have to get the security deposit back to them that they're not keeping?
Yeah, there is a certain amount of time. I don't actually have that exact number right in front of me.
I threw that one at you.
Yeah, that one jumped right out of my brain real quick,
But there is a time frame
yes,
that people should be aware of.
Yeah, and they need to give an actual list of damages in that amount of time too. So you can't just kind of hokey it up and take the money.
Okay. Well, now speaking of that, when a landlord gets a unit back and there is damage, what are some of the things they should do to make note of those? Like, should they be taking pictures, or what's the best way to go?
First of all, there should have been an inventory checklist done at the very beginning of the tenancy. I know that the tenant has 7 days to turn in an inventory checklist, and it's their right to ask for that if it's not there. So once they turn that in, the landlord will go through and do a whole separate identification, and so that's how they'll.
Yeah.
So there's the one from when they move in is kind of like the baseline, and then
Right, so that your
they use
current
that same one afterwards to see what the differences are.
exactly. So your current tenant isn't paying for things that happened before they
Right.
took
That makes sense.
before they took possession.
Jeff, I know you're taking calls. Good morning. Go ahead.
Hey, you there?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, there you are.
Let me turn my mic on.
Is it legal to do inspections during the month or every other month, quarterly, while the tenant is there to make sure they are not tearing up the property?
Well, anytime you expect to go into the property, you're going to have to give a reasonable notice for some reason to go into that property. But, I really don't think that it's not a good way to manage your property, I would say that, to be going into it monthly.
Investment. If I'm trying to protect my investment, say, okay, every other month on the 20th, I can come in and inspect the property, make sure you're not vandalizing it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's fun.
You mean an agreement with the tenant?
Well, yeah, it would be an agreement
Yeah.
Well, and Greg brings up a good point there, and that's, yeah, you can we have freedom to contract. You can contract for anything you want to do along those lines, and if the tenant is agreeable to those terms, then that's perfectly up to them to do. There's nothing in the statute that says you can't go in there periodically to look. The only thing that's in the statute is that, yes, you in fact have to give them notice that you're going to be going in. And so, yeah, I would put that into your lease agreement, though, and make sure that the tenant is okay with that sort of thing. The last thing you want to do is have them thinking you're harassing them in some way.
Right. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. How do you break a lease, Jeff?
Oh,
Come on. Let's get the big stuff going here.
right.
Well, I think to break a lease, there are some specific things, and you're going to want to place some of these into your lease agreement. I think it's important to understand that there are the Service Members Civil Relief Act. Service members can break leases when they are deployed. It's funny you brought that up. There's a brand new law that came out, I think, in 2010, MCL 554601B.
Let me write that down.
Yeah, take notes. And this is kind of to stop from various domestic violence situations, or when somebody has a reasonable fear of their life or whatnot. And actually, there's a specific language that you need to place into your lease agreement that a tenant has a reasonable apprehension of present danger to him, his or her child from a domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking, may have special statutory rights to seek release of their rental obligations. And that's kind of an important little thing to have in there, but you can't just jump out of your lease because of it. I think there's some stuff in there that you need to have an affidavit by some sort of law enforcement agency or anything along those lines that actually proves that you just can't walk up to your landlord one day and say, hey, I'm kind of scared of this guy and I want out of my lease. It doesn't really work that way.
But it could.
Well, if you got the proper documentation,
Yeah.
it could work for
Well,
you.
I'm looking for a lease buster. What do you got? Give me a lease buster.
Those are two of them right there. There's really not too many. I think a good idea, and I've seen it in leases, is a buyout. Something is sort of a liquidated damage right away. Say, pay us one more month, give us a 30-day notice. If you're current on everything, then we'll let you out. Kind of mutual benefits the landlord and the tenant. Landlord will get 30 days to look for somebody else, but overall, if you want to jump out of a lease, I mean, no one says you can't just surrender your premises, but you're still on the hook to pay your monthly rent.
Well, you don't want to do that. I'm thinking. Hi, do you have a question today?
Yeah, Greg, if you want to get out of your lease, just go with the marijuana. Don't get y'all.
Okay. Thank you. That's probably...
Well, that's
the way I
actually,
wanna do
speaking of marijuana, that's something that we just brought up in our office because I believe we've added that to our leases, haven't we? Something
Yeah,
with regards to that.
that's been added to any of the leases that Laura and Bill had. They specifically put in there that, regardless of the
Law.
Medical Marijuana Act, there's not to be any sort of smoking of marijuana in the premises itself. So. And I think the Act says you can't be smoking it outside, so you're kind of going to not be able to operate with that.
Can you grow it?
I would say that growing it would be an absolute no-no because that can actually damage a property pretty badly.
Really?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of moisture getting put into places, and I think that's pretty could damage a property.
All right. What else should we talk about? Well, looks like we got another question.
Hi, do you have a question?
What happens if they pass this marijuana situation they got going up in Lansing right now? What are you going to do then? If they make it okay, are you going to say no, even though the state says it's okay for recreational use?
I think that's what Jeff just said. If you really you're writing your own lease. You're making your own rules.
Right.
So you can certainly circumvent what the city ordinance is for marijuana.
Okay.
For example, smoking cigarettes is perfectly legal, but many tenants aren't allowed to smoke cigarettes, and there's absolutely nothing wrong.
Smoking cigarettes isn't legal anymore. Wherever you go, there's a wall that you can't smoke here, so they're not too legal, really.
And there's several lease agreements that say the same thing.
Yeah. Thanks, Jim. 787-3397.
Boy, I'm getting more calls
I
than Bill
know.
and Laura do.
You're
Like,
so
just-
popular
Always.
today.
Always taking your questions.
This is a popular topic.
It's interesting because I thought there's probably nothing more boring in the world than landlord-tenant law.
Oh, I think it's tricky though.
It is a tricky area.
And there's a
of
lot.
law.
The thing is, Jeff, I think there's a lot of people involved in it. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's absolutely true. It's boy, I would have never thought though. You know, I wanted to say one thing that I think there's a few acts or laws that anybody thinking about getting into the rental game should probably review. I mentioned it earlier, the Service Member Civil Relief Act is important. The Revised Judicature Act of 1961, that kind of is the all in all how to get into court and how courts operate. It's pretty good to look at. Michigan court rules are really important to how the summary proceedings, if you're trying to sue somebody for back rent or termination of their tenancy, you're going to want to follow along the rules of the court. Truth in Renting Act is Act 454 of 1978.
is that a small claim if you try to sue somebody for?
No, small
Rent?
claims is completely different.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, when you sue somebody for rent, you're suing them under what's called summary proceedings. And that's just to recover possession, and you may tack on a money judgment to that for an extra filing fee. You're not going to get the money judgment unless you can actually get your tenant personally served, though.
Do you have a quick question?
Yeah, I do. What happens if I have a broken item in my house and the landlord won't fix it? Do I have to pay rent, or what do I have to do to try to persuade him not to fix it?
That's a good question. I would actually document it, write it down, and I would send to wherever your landlord had as a noticing area. I would notice them on it. If it's not something that's going to make the apartment or premises untenable, then they will fix it in a reasonable time. So I would document it though.
But you do still need to pay rent.
But you still need to pay your rent, and if it's something that's it's really bothering you or whatnot, place your rent in an escrow account. Exercise your rights and then place it in an escrow account in order to, or place it in deposit with the court.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like we're just about out of time here.
We are,
So.
yeah.
Wait, twice flies.
Good
I
job.
know.
Good job, Jeff.
Lots of good information there. If you have any questions with regards to landlord-tenant stuff, you can always, call Schlechte Law Firm, and if they can't help you, they'll point you in the right direction. The number there is 782.
Do you get a free consultation, Jeff?
I don't know about that.
That's up to the boss to decide. how
Right,
it goes.
exactly. Their number is 782-7090, or you can always call our office at 780-3800.
Just want to shake up Bill
Right,
You're right.
in case he's listening.
Really quick, I have a new listing. We just listed a house at 301 Ridgeway. It's cute, just over 800 square feet, maybe it's 875, I think. 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, listed for $72,500. Ridgeway, this is the Ridgeway, it's off of Ann Arbor Road, up northeast of town.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got one open house this weekend from 1 to 2 on Sunday, 1 to 2:30 on Sunday. It's 4620 Clark Lake Road for $147,000, 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths. This is a really, really nice house. They've done really good updates to it. It's on their backyard is like sitting in a park. It's beautiful. So come on out, see me, and we'll get you into this house.
ThinkingRealEstate.com. Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks.
Jeff.
Yep, thanks.
So when it's time to move, just know they've got a